July 3rd, 2022 in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, going on Geneva Lake boat tour. Here's looking down the main street. Looking down the main strip. So our boat tour is like 3:15 to 5:15, I think. So heading down there now. There's like a little mini harbor here. So getting close to, we'll catch a boat over there. So there's the boat tours right there. There's Geneva Lake. So we get on the boat tour. It's actually like right there. The Riviera. The boat tours. Just picking up, getting pre-checked in. There's some information on the boat. It's not here yet, but it should be here pretty soon. There's the beach. Here's off the pier. There's the backside of the Riviera. There's other boat tours. Here comes the boat in. That boat over there. Wedding party on that boat. That one's almost done loading. Oh, the wedding boat left. I didn't even notice that.
When ours pulled in, he came.
There's our boat and the stats. The beach behind. Here's getting on the boat.
Hi.
How are you?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Close an aisle down the center and then looking back.
Hello everyone, how's everyone doing today? Good. Hope you're enjoying this beautiful day on the lake. My name is Alexis. I will be giving part of your tour today. I am 17 and I'm going to be a senior at Badger High School. And this is my first season working at the cruise line, and this is my second day giving the tours. So hopefully it all goes well for you guys. I will be starting shortly.
So just leaving the dock there. There's the beach. Start seeing more boats and jet skis out here.
The modern brick building behind the Riviera Beach is Lake Geneva Public Library. This prairie-style building was designed by Mr. James Dresser, a student of the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. The property along the shoreline is known as Library Park. Mary Sturgis, an early resident, gave this land along with the cottage that once stood here to the city of Lake Geneva in 1894. The gift came with the stipulation that the property always be used as a public park and that their cottage serve as the city's first library. The original building stood until its new building was completed in the 1950s. We'll see the site of the second George and Mary Sturgis home further along down the shoreline. During the tour today, we'll be pointing out many interesting and beautiful homes and estates. Some of these are remnants of the bygone era here on the Geneva Lake, an era of elegance roughly between the years of 1870 and 1920, when the men who built these estates were at the forefront of Chicago's business and industry. As you will see, the development of Geneva Lake area is closely tied with the growth of the prairie town known as Chicago. The people who settled here were more than just wealthy industrialists in the field of banking, railroading, stock market, and politics. They were also founders of some of the country's most highly regarded museums and universities. In addition, many of them were pioneers in the fields of employee rights, education, and the arts. It was because of their convictions that many of the employment practices, business, and institutions we know today exist. The tan house on your right is the first large summer home built on the lake. It was called Maple Lawn, built on the site in 1870 for Shelton Sturgis. He and his brothers were business partners and each had summer homes in the area. The mansion was torn down over a decade ago, and this new home was built in its place. The Sturgis family, including brothers Buckingham, George, and Shelton of Chicago, were among the earliest summer residents here at the lake. Of homes known as the Geneva Manor subdivision, founded in 1926. There are 80 homes, of which about half are used year-round. One of the unique things to know about Geneva Manor subdivision is that all the architectural styles of the houses are different. This is mandated by subdivision covenants. The manor is built on 37 acres of the Levi Z. Leiter estate, which was known as Linden Lodge and dated back in 1879. Leiter became partners with a man named Marshall Field, and together they began a department store operation known as Field, Leiter and Company. The partnership suffered through the Great Chicago Fire, losing $2.5 million in goods, but managed to reopen the store 18 months later. Leiter Field parted ways in 1881, and you're likely familiar with what the store came out of that split, Marshall Field's. While fortunate that numerous homes remained through the years, many of the large summer estates that were here were lost. Several of them burned, others sold off during business and economic hard times. Estates were costly to maintain. Many of these were second homes. As the estates disappeared, many of the properties were subdivided. The Geneva Manor subdivision is just one example of this. The handsome Victorian boathouse on the shoreline is one of the few remaining structures of the estate known as Snug Harbor. Snug Harbor was built in 1881 for Mr. and Mrs. George Sturgis, the brother of Shelton Sturgis of Maple Lawn. George and Mary, who you will recall donated the first library and library park, built a large French chateau on this site. In 1947, the estate became known as Covenant Harbor Bible Camp, owned and operated by the Evangelical Covenant Churches of America. Today, Covenant Harbor Bible Camp and the Geneva Bay host many different youth, family, and senior hostel programs throughout the year. The main home from this original Snug Harbor estate was located in the open area left of the boathouse and stood here until 1957 when it burned due to an electrical short circuit. The next group of homes is called the Geneva Bay Estates and is built on the former site of a large and beautiful estate known as the Butternuts. The home was built in 1874 for Nathaniel Kellogg Fairbank, president of the N.K. Fairbank Company, which was Chicago's leading manufacturer in soap. The Fairbanks home took up roughly the same area as the first three homes in the subdivision. Shortly after the home was completed in 1875, it burned to the ground. However, firemen, family, and servants were able to save the furnishings and the handsome wood trim, ornately carved mantelpieces, and even some of the staircases. Undeterred, Mr. Fairbank had work begin the following Monday morning to rebuild the home from its original plans. It stood here for the next 80 years and stayed in the Fairbank family for 4 generations, until 1955 when it was torn down and the property subdivided. In 1895, a 5-hole golf course was added to the estate grounds. It was here on Mr. Fairbank's golf course that many of the millionaires living at the lake were introduced to a relatively new game of golf. Later that year, they established the Lake Geneva Country Club that we'll see later on in the tour. Until now, I have asked you to use your imagination to picture what some of these estates look like. However, for the next few miles of shoreline, most of the properties remain relatively intact and unchanged from when they were built in the heyday of our Newport Upper West period. This was in reference to Newport, Rhode Island, the famous summer resort on the East Coast. Blacktop, the white home with the red roof and chimneys, is typical of the homes built during Lake Geneva's golden era. Blacktop was built in 1881 for John T. Lester, who was a prominent member of the Chicago Board of Trade. All of the next 6 properties are especially interesting as they are currently or at one point all a part of the Wrigley estate. Under William and P.K. Wrigley, the family amassed vast businesses, sports, and real estate holdings. At the time of PK's passing in 1977, the family's interests included the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company, the Chicago Cubs, Wrigley Field, the Wrigley Building in downtown Chicago, real estate holdings in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, and most of Catalina Island off of the southern coast of California. The next home on the Wrigley complex is called Northwoodside and was constructed in 1876 for General Henry Strong, president of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. In later years, Northwoodside was owned by Olaf Nelson T. Vander, who was credited with numerous inventions. One invention, which proved to be quite successful, was the sanitary milk bottle cap, which is the small cardboard disc stamped atop of old glass milk bottles. It is said that the invention enabled Mr. T. Manor to retire here at the ripe old age of 26, a multimillionaire. The next part of the state is called Hillcroft. This state began in 1880s and is a small hunting lodge for architect Henry Lord Gay and was originally named Galen. From 1927 until 1966, Hillcroft, as it was named, served as P.K. Wrigley's summer residence, and as later as his guest house. The next home is called Green Gables and was P.K. Wrigley's main residence at the time of his passing in 1977. The original home was torn down in 1955 and the new home was completed in 1966. At the time, it was considered state-of-the-art as everything from the flagpole to the drapery was controlled electronically. While you may think Mr. Wrigley downsized with this next property, it is just the pool and bathhouse, so obviously there wasn't much downsizing there as it only accompanied people to swim as if there was nowhere else to swim on this lake. The barn-shaped building with a green gabled roofing is the Wrigley Boathouse. It is the original Green Gables estate and is the winter quarters for the Wrigley fleet. The Brown building is called Deadwood and made up of a series of boathouses and was built in 1910 to house 4 steam yachts. The property briefly interrupts the Wrigley estate at the shoreline, but it continues a half-mile back with the Wrigley Arabian Horse Farm and polo field. As we round this small point of land, we will get a good view of Witchwood, the final home on the Wrigley complex. Witchwood was constructed in 1902 for Charles Hutchinson, who was a trustee and treasurer of University of Chicago and a founder of the Art Institute in Chicago. Charles and his wife, Frances, built a rambling 3-story home with a definite English country influence. Following Mr. Hutchins' death in 1932, the property eventually landed under the stewardship of the University of Chicago for scientific study before finally falling victim to subdivision and sale. The cream-colored villa with the orange-tile roof was the first of several estates built in 1906. It was constructed for Edward F. Swift, the son of Gustavus Swift, founder of the Swift Meat Packing Company. The estate was known as Villa Hortensia, named for his wife Hortense. The estate was called Edgewood after a change of ownership took place in 1929. The property is now the summer home of a Chicago businessman who is now named at Casa Suolago. Now you might want to take out your cameras because many consider this next home to be the most beautiful on the lake and is a stunning example of Georgian architecture. It was known as Wadsworth Hall when completed in 1906 for Norman Wade Harris of the Harris Trust and Savings Bank in Chicago, which is today known as BMO Harris Bank. In 1920, the estate was purchased by Walden W. Shaw, co-founder of the Yellow Taxi Cab Company in Chicago, and was renamed The Stunning. By the 1930s, it was owned by Shaw's son-in-law, Daniel F. Perkin, Jr., who was president of the Morton Salt Company. The estate remained in Shaw Perkin family for nearly 80 years before it was sold to an investment advisor named Richard Driehaus. Mr. Driehaus had the property meticulously restored in 1999, and as you can see, it is a truly fine example of historic preservation. Unfortunately and unexpectedly, Mr. Driehaus passed away just last year. Mr. Driehaus was a very generous man, having donated over $95 million to various charities through his foundation. Mr. Driehaus was also known locally for the lavish birthday party he threw every year for himself, with elaborate themes, famous entertainment, and over 1,000 guests. Each year, the party had a different theme. The evening always ended with a lavish fireworks display over the lake. Some of the more memorable entertainers who have performed here have included the band Chicago, Martin Short, Frank Avalon, the Beach Boys, and Diana Ross. The next home, nestled back among the trees, is appropriately called House in the Woods. The home was completed in 1906 for Mr. Clay Bartlett, a wholesale hardware distributor and one of the founders of what is now True Value Hardware. Because the contractor, Richard Suter, was busy building large Swift and Harris homes at the same time, special plans were made to complete the home on schedule. Mr. Suter went to Delavan, Wisconsin, just 10 miles away, and borrowed a 3-ring circus tent from P.T. Barnum's Circus, who kept the circus there in the off-season. The tent was erected on the site and heated so that construction could continue through the dead of winter. The house had to be finished on time because it was to be a surprise birthday present for Mr. Bartlett in the spring. Now you might see throughout the tour today people walking along the shoreline. I promise you they are not trespassing. We just have a lake path that goes throughout the perimeter of the lake, which is a whole 26 miles, and it can take you anywhere from 8 to 12 hours depending on how fast you walk.
Look at that one way up there. I would rather be higher up like that.
Past the modern homes on the ridge ahead of us, set above the flat lawn, is an old mansion with a red roof and white columns known as Bonnie Brae. Bonnie Brae was built in 1881 for Judge Thomas F. Withrow and named for his daughter Bonnie. In 1897, Bonnie Brae was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Martin A. Ryerson. The Ryerson family was in the lumber and steel business and had the good fortune of being heir to one of the only Yumbelards that survived the Great Chicago Fire of 1871.
Let's look it down on the first deck.
The Brae home, practically in the water, was originally a boathouse for the Bonnie Brae estate, which originally had 1,200 feet of lake frontage. It was built before the turn of the 20th century to house the steam yacht, the Hathor.
After every blind turn, I always think Williams Bay is the next turn, and it's
something.
and when you walk it, it's even worse. You're like, oh. Can't believe I walked this whole thing.
When the Italian Renaissance home on the hill was constructed in 1919 for Colonel William N. Palouse, it was designed by famous architect of the time, Howard Van Dornshaw. Mr. Palouse was founder of the Palouse Scale and Balance Company. At one time, Palouse scales were used exclusively by the U.S. Postal Department. Palouse scales are still made today, but they are digital, and the company is owned by Rubbermaid. The home was named Alta Vista, meaning high view, and the name remains today. In the growth of Geneva Lake as a resort for Chicago's wealthy. First of all, in the 1870s, numerous men from Chicago came here to hunt and fish, and their love of this area convinced them that Geneva Lake would be a fine place to build a summer home. Chicago, at that time, was a dirty and noisy city. Coal dust and fumes turned the buildings black, and the city smelled because of the animal byproducts from slaughterhouses at the Union stockyards being dumped into the Chicago River. Another factor was the Chicago Fire, which occurred on October 8, 1871. Many of the families displaced by the fire actually escaped the burning building by getting on a train and coming here to the lake. Many people stayed here at the lake through that fall and winter of 1872 while awaiting the reconstruction of their city homes. Within a few years, when the city and its industries were back on their feet and money was more available, more and more Chicagoans selected Geneva Lake for their summer retreat.
Getting a little choppy.
The stone mansion is called Glen Fern and was built in 1911 for Judge Nathaniel Sears of Chicago. Judge Sears first arrived in Lake Geneva as a summer resident in 1894, and the home remained in the family till 1934. In the early days, Chicago Cook County court system had a rather questionable reputation. Upon Judge Sears' arrival here, our local newspaper noted that he was one of the few honest judges left in Cook County. The next 1,450 feet of shoreline and the next 20 homes comprise the Elgin Club, which was established in 1874. The Elgin Club is the oldest club of its type on the lake, and all of its original members were from Elgin, Illinois. The Elgin Club set the precedent for all clubs and associations on the lake that would follow. The founding of the club is an interesting story. Apparently, a group of Elgin men had spent a few days hunting and fishing here at the lake. Two of the men lingered an extra day or two, and they decided they would like to buy an acre on the lake shore to camp or build a cabin on. The owner of the property agreed to sell only if they would purchase the entire 16-acre parcel. He would not split it up. This was considerably more land than the men had in mind, so they went home to think it over. They decided perhaps that they would divide the property and sell lots to their friends in Elgin. They came back the following week and purchased the entire 16-acre parcel for $400. The Elgin Club today is comprised of 18 private lakeside homes and are all still part of the club. Beginning with the cream-colored home behind Pier 130 and continuing down the entire lake of the concrete seawall, more than a fourth of a mile is the site of Jerseyhurst, the estate of Richard Teller Crane. The Crane Company, founded in 1855 and still in existence today, was for generations the world's largest manufacturer of plumbing supplies and bathroom fixtures. The Crane Company was more dominant in the industry than Kohler is today. Mr. Crane was a leader in employee rights. He was the
What
first
a party
in
over there.
the country to inaugurate the custom of paying employees a percentage of the company's earnings, and he allowed all employees to purchase stock from the company. We are now approaching the former site of Camp Augustana, built on the eastern half of the former Glen Ara estate. Camp Augustana was a Lutheran church camp operated by the Illinois Synod of Lutheran Church of America. The beautiful olive green home with a large stone foundation and turret is an original estate building. It started out as the billiard hall for the Piscataqua Hotel and later became a private home and part of the Ara Glen estate of John Cook. Mr. Cook owned and operated the Piscataqua Hotel and was a very popular and lavish resort which opened here in 1880. It was opened as the Temperance Resort and was only in operation for about 12 years. It was advertised as being the largest resort hotel of its type in the Midwest and was very similar to the famous Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. The four-story hotel featured a third of a mile of verandas all overlooking the lake, as well as bowling alleys, a beach, billiard house, elegant bar, 51 acres of park for hiking, a farm, and a dining room that could seat over 300 people at one seating. Unfortunately, the resort was never able to enjoy consistent financial success, and when the main hotel burned in December of 1892, the resort would never be built.
Seems like the theme is fire. Hopefully around this next bend we should have Williams Bay.
The next group of homes was called Rowena Park. At one time, Rowena Park was owned by Ebenezer Buckingham, who built and operated grain elevators in Chicago with the Sturgis brothers. In 1927, Mr. Buckingham's daughter, Kate, donated the beautiful Buckingham Fountain to the city of Chicago. Donated in honor of her brother Clarence, the Buckingham Fountain is considered one of the finest ornamental fountains in America.
Got some people in the water.
Oh, Scotch. You know what you're going nuts. No flag off.
This next corner is Williams Bay, right?
I think so.
That's what I think.
You know, to see the observatory tower at the top.
Ah! Now the old ski lodge was over there somewhere, where they had the concert venue. Can we go all the way to Fontana?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Whole perimeter, everything. I agree. He walked around there. What?
The elegant
Twice.
dark blue orange
2 years
striped
apart,
pier
but yeah.
168 is the 87-foot-long big pier. The largest of the old turn of the 20th century yachts still left on the lake. The Polaris and the steam yacht Louise, which are part of our tour fleet, were built in the same shipyard of Racine Boat Works. Tralee, the large gray home set back on the hill, has been altered throughout the years. But this is the original structure built in 1895 for John M. Smith, founder of the John M. Smith Furniture Company in Chicago. Glen Annie, now called Terrion, is the rambling white home with a semicircular staircase. It was built in 1895, and the section with the stairway is original, but additions have been added on both sides. The lovely stone home on the hill is built on the former site of the Schwinn estate. The Schwinn family was owners of the world-famous Schwinn Bicycle Company in Chicago. Ignaz Schwinn started the bicycle company in 1895 and built a beautiful brick summer home on the hill in 1928. That home stood there until 1993 when the family sold the property. The original home was torn down and this new French chateau was built about 20 years ago. The grayish-blue home with the white trim is called Alpine Villa and was constructed in 1874, making it one of the oldest properties on the lake. This was once a rural hunting and fishing lodge and was at the time the only building in the area. Beginning with the next group of homes and extending all the way into Williams Bay is the Cedar Point Park subdivision, the largest on the lake. Cedar Point is divided into 8 sections, each having boat docking facilities and a swimming area similar to the one we are passing. It was set up this way so residents who could live off the lake can enjoy lake rides. When the Potawatomi inhabited the area, Cedar Point was considered sacred ground to them. About 50 feet inland was a large boulder of a spirit stone around when they staged their ceremonies. They also believed that the cedar trees that once lined the shore here contained spirits of departed ancestors.
It's an observatory right there.
We are now entering Williams Bay, named for Captain Israel Williams, an Army veteran and early settler here. The village of Williams Bay is one of the 3 municipalities located on the lake with a population of about 2,500 permanent residents, a population that triples in the summer. In 1888, the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad opened the spur line from the city of Lake Geneva to the beachfront here in Williams Bay. A major reason for the train service being extended from the city of Lake Geneva to Williams Bay was to provide transportation to the estate owners who could dock their large yachts here and then be easily transported to their private estates. Boat transportation at that time was more than a luxury. Land travel around the lake was difficult and often impossible, even after the road around the lake was completed in 1910. For many years, people depended on the private and commercial steamers to deliver the guests, customers, and residents, as well as goods and services. The railroad depot was located on the north side of Geneva Street, close to the north end of the bay. This is where the Millionaire Special train arrived, bringing many of the lakeshore homeowners from their Chicago businesses to their summer homes. The families would move here each summer, and the men would commute to Chicago for work. Private yachts would be awaiting their owners to take them from the depot to their luxurious mansions. After the railroad discontinued service to Williams Bay in 1967, the village purchased the lakefront property from the railroad and built a beautiful lakefront park that has won both national and international awards for design. The land behind the railroad property was owned by private developers who, for the next 28 years, attempted to dredge the wetlands and built a resort, condos, and a golf course. Luckily, the village residences, planning commission, and village board felt strongly about protecting the environment and bought the property with local tax dollars for $1.2 million. Immediately after the purchase of 230 acres, it was rezoned into conservatory for the Kishwaukee Nature Conservancy, and it was created. You can now enter the trail system from two locations, on the lakefront or on the north end of the village on Highway 67. There are 4 miles of trails. Trail maps at the main entrances show access to the acres of wildflowers, restored wetlands, and beautiful sedge meadows to enjoy. The Conservancy is open year-round.
There's a pier, whatever, right?
During the winter, the lake typically freezes completely over. Sometimes 2 to 3 feet deep covers the ice lake. There are many other winter activities in the area, such as ice fishing, snowmobiling, ice skating, and ice boating. Williams Bay is home to several restaurants and unique shops. If you are visiting the area, take some time to visit this quaint lakeshore village. The 2 brick towers in front of us are the Bay Colony and Bay Colony South condominiums, built in the 1970s.
Here's where all the boats, they work on them in the off season. So now we're leaving Williams Bay. We'll be heading to Fontana, which will be
This location is also
that
home
way.
of Pier 290 restaurant, which opened in 2012 and is a year-round destination here on the lakefront. There's inside seating for 70 people with outdoor dining right on the lake's edge for approximately 100 guests. Cozy fireplace, both inside and out, are designed to create a 4-season dining experience for people who arrive by boat or land. Pier 290 also features a gift shop with lake-like merchandise and a private event spaces that can host parties from 25 to over 300 people. The renovated marina includes a wooden boat center where boats are custom built, restored, and serviced and sold. Beach Marine provides some of the best boat maintenance and care in the region and is nationally recognized for the quality of the personnel.
Some people in a boat there.
The home with the 5 arched windows was built
So over there's the old ski lodge, I believe.
Co-founder of the Lion and Healy Music Publishing Company in Chicago. Mr. Healy was a strong supporter of a variety of charities and even donated the magnificent pipe organ to St. Francis Catholic Church in the city of Lake Geneva.
We're already 50 minutes in. Well, we left late, so probably 45, but still. Just had a battery change there.
As we round Conference Point Camp, off to our left is the deepest part of Geneva Lake, under 142 feet of water. Conference Point Camp is one of the largest camp facilities on the lake. For many years, Conference Point Camp was run by the National Council of Churches. It was established in 1873 for Rev. Joseph Colley and was originally known as Camp Colley. In 1965, Rev. Dr. Martin Luther King stayed at Conference Point Camp together with associates and supporters before they went on to Chicago to begin what became known as the Chicago Freedom Movement. Over the tops of the trees, you can see the domes of Yerkes Observatory. The University of Chicago established Yerkes Observatory as their center for astronomy and astrophysics in the 1890s. Located in a beautiful park-like setting, Yerkes is home to the 40-inch refractor telescope, the largest lens-type telescope in the world. It has a main lens housed in a 64-foot-long telescopic tube. The entire instrument weighs over 20 tons. This site was chosen because it was close enough to Chicago for convenience, yet far enough away so that the city lights would not obstruct the view of the telescope. When Yerkes was built in the late 1800s, there was a train that came into Williams Bay from Chicago, making it easy for scientists to visit the observatory. Most notable scientists who have visited Yerkes are Albert Einstein and Edwin Hubble, inventor of the Hubble telescope. In March 2018, the University of Chicago announced they were withdrawing funding for Yerkes Observatory and it was closed to the public. On May 1st, 2020, a two-year effort to preserve the beloved landmark of scientific exploration and education, the private Yerkes Future Foundation officially assumed ownership of the property from the University of Chicago. It is now back open for tours if you are interested.
Oh. Last 3 times I went, it was closed. I feel more intimidated to walk around it now doing it this way. It seems way bigger.
I don't know. I still can't comprehend it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like
Just
from
from here to there, it seems like it'd take you a half a day.
Yeah. Just if you walk from one straight across, it seems like it would take a day.
Yeah.
That one's weird. I wonder what that is. I hope she
We are now
says.
approaching George Williams College of Aurora University in Williams Bay. From its founding in 1886 as a training institute for the YMCA, George Williams College has been a learning destination for students of all ages. By 1851, the YMCA movement had spread across Europe to the United States and Canada. Sitting before a campfire on the shores of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, George Williams and 2 others conceived of a permanent professional YMCA training school. Land was purchased in Williams Bay in 1886, the training camp, which would become George Williams College, was founded. The campus thrived as YMCA workers from across the country gathered for physical activity, spiritual reflection, and service learning. The training camp grew fast, and in 1890 it moved to the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago and became an institution of higher learning for students entering human service professions such as parks and recreation, education, and social work. The Lake Geneva campus served as a college camp used for retreats. George Williams College and Aurora University formed an official partnership in 2000 based on their mutual dedication to the transformative power of learning. Aurora University enrolls 5,600 undergraduate and graduate students per year. Today, George Williams College and Aurora University offers academic programs and unique conference facilities and welcomes 3,000 guests every year. Founded by Norman Burton Barr in 1909, Norman B. Barr Camp's mission has been to provide a totally free Christian-based summer camp experience for unserved youth and people with disabilities. It is one of the oldest and continuously operating non-for-profit summer camps in the United States. Barr was the pastor of the Olivet Presbyterian Church and superintendent on the Olivet Social Institute Settlement House, both of which are located in Chicago's working class neighborhood.
It'll be fun to watch this in the middle of winter.
We are now approaching Eline Point. The surrounding land was part of the Edward G. Eline estate called Forest Glen. The original mansion, known as Villa Palatina, stood on the hill where that group of homes now stands until 1922 when it burned. The area was originally used as a resort and was known as Forest Glen. In 1893, George Weiss, a Chicago brewer, bought the land and sold portions of it so he could build his home called Villa Palatina. The next group of homes is called Belvedere Park, which was established in 1875 by a group of residents from Belvedere, Illinois. The group of homes on the hill is the Buena Vista Club. Buena Vista is Spanish. We are now approaching the village of Fontana, the halfway point of our journey. The name Fontana comes from the word meaning fountain or spring. This is appropriate since
I think he
most
gave
of
it a
the
little more
organized
gas
springs
to make up the
into
time.
Geneva Lake are located here at the western end of the lake. The clear water in the lake comes from many pure underground springs, as well as precipitation in the form of rain and snow. Fontana is built here on the site where an encampment of Potawatomi was discovered in 1831. The village was established in 1898 when an electronic trolley was built from Harvard, Illinois. The trolleys came here every hour and were met by a steamboat service which transported people to the different points around the lake. Fontana is the site of well-known Abbey Resort Hotel. In the background behind the building and shoreline buildings, you can see the large A-frame and other buildings in the Abbey complex. The Abbey features several hundred guests, convention facilities, restaurants, gift shops, spa, swimming pools, condominiums, and a large marina that can accommodate several hundred boats. Some of the boats are visible beyond Fontana Beach. The small bay we are passing is known as Rainbow Bay, followed by Rainbow Point. The homes in this area date back to the 1920s, and most of the owners are related to the founding family. Over the top of that white boat over there is normally a tugboat named the Benjamin F. Bates, and it was in the Williams Bay area, so maybe you guys saw it, maybe you didn't. We are now passing the Harvard Club, which was established in 1875 as a camping club, and all of the original members were from Harvard, Illinois.
Fontana, there was a snack place. I got food, and like I said, one time a lady gave me water. She ran in her house and got some. I brought water, but it was not nearly enough. But I also didn't want to be weighed down with 10 water bottles.
The brown-colored building is the Abbey Springs Yacht Club, which is part of the Abbey Springs condominium development. In addition to the yacht club, Abbey Springs has a beautiful golf course, swimming pool, and tennis courts. The Abbey Springs development is built on the site of Edward G. Eyre estate known as the Oaks. It is constructed in 1875 and included 1,200 acres of property. Mr. Eyre was in the lumber business and co-owner of the Eyre and Lord Railroad Tie Company. As the major railroads expanded westward, the Eyre and Lord Company supplied them with the railroad ties which led to Mr. Eyre's business fortune.
We went right over it.
So we got coming here. One of them is the old military academy. I think that's the old military place.
Things always have water.
This green home is called Glencroft Haven. It is a family home built for their grown children and grandkids. It was finished in 2016. It has 23,200 square feet of living space with 9 bedrooms and 15 bathrooms. There are 2 attached garages, including a 9-car base for a private vintage museum featuring quality cars. On top of the garages, you can see a pool house with a stainless steel pool. The goal of the family was to make the home look like it had been built 100 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So if you look over, there's a pier with the blue and white canvases. That will be our start of the next house. So it's a blue mansion with a right trim, built in 1896 for George P. Braun, and was called the Echoes. Mr. Braun's company was one of the U.S. pioneers in the manufacture of oleomargarine. Around 1891, one of his customers was a struggling soap salesman named William Wrigley Jr., who included chewing gum as a bonus in his boxes of soap and baking powder. Mr. Wrigley soon saw the potential of selling gum without the other products and gave up on the soap business. It wasn't long before the 2 men joined forces to create the William Wrigley Jr. Chewing Company. The rest of the story is business is history. As a side note, Mr. Cox's granddaughter, Helen Atwater, married William Wrigley's son, PK, in 1927. The white building was completed in 2015 and is the clubhouse of the Lake Geneva Yacht Club, named the Buddy Melga Sailing Center. The yacht club was chartered in 1874 and has been on the site since 1926. The yacht club is the starting and finishing point for most sailboat races held on the lake. The yacht club is also home of the Sheridan Cup Regatta, which is a race that has been held here the last weekend in August since 1874. Many famous sailors have come from the Lake Geneva Yacht Club. Most notable is Mr. Buddy Malgus. Buddy Malgus is the first man in history to win a gold medal in the Olympics and go on to win the America's Cup. Buddy still sails here on Geneva Lake in the A boat fleet, 38 feet with a 6 to 7 person crew, and is quite competitive. He still often wins races despite being 90 years of age. We are now passing the South Shore Club, which is just with the tan canvases up ahead. The South Shore Club features 40 luxury homes built in a European village or cluster style, leaving much of the land open and especially the grand lawn and century-old trees. This is also the site of former Kay's Park Resort. Arthur Kay opened a very lavish resort here in 1875, and many of the millionaires who later built homes at the lake first saw the lake while staying here at Kay's Park. The facilities included a racetrack, zoo, museum, amusement park, elegant hotel, a steamboat, which met the trains at Williams Bay, and a dance hall, which they say could hold thousands of dancers. For many years, Kay's Park was regarded as one of the most popular resorts in the Midwest. By the turn of the century, however, the number of visitors had steadily declined. People were seeking more modern accommodations, and the resort, though beautiful, was becoming thoroughly unmodern. Toward the end of Kay's Park heyday, a portion of this land became the former Northwestern Military and Naval Academy. The academy had roots on this side since 1911, and it was moved here from Highland Park, Illinois. There is a massive stone building in the center of the field called the Davidson Hall, built in 1915 and named for Colonel Harlan Davidson, the school's founder. Next to the large mansion is a brownstone home with a blue slate roof called the Majestic Lodge. It is the house with the American flag right in front. It was built in 1928 for the William C. Gunroe. Mr. Gunroe founded Will Chicken Farms, which was located on the land behind this lakeshore home. When operating in the 1930s and 40s, the Will Farms were one of the largest processors of poultry in the Midwest. Mr. Gunroe also manufactured Majestic radios and Majestic appliances, and his relatives started the Majestic Ski Hill. The ski hill closed due to financial problems in the 1980s. Above the treetops, you can see the remains of the old man-made ski hill. The Majestic Ski Hill was made by trucking 2 million cubic yards of filled dirt. We are now approaching Black Point, and as if you watch carefully along the tops of the trees, you will catch a glimpse of the Conrad Sipe Mansion, which dates back to 1888. Conrad Sipe came to the United States from Germany in the mid-1800s and was a master carver and woodworker. In the later years, Mr. Sipe established Sipe's Brewery in Chicago and was a highly regarded firm in its time, but closed permanently during Prohibition. The home has been virtually unaltered since it was built in 1888 and truly is a time capsule of Lake Geneva's golden age. The home still has all the original furniture, oriental rugs, plumbing, draperies, and fixtures. Throughout the home are beautifully crafted wood trimmings and moldings, and ornate fireplaces with beautiful ceramic tiles. In 2005, after winning a 10-year court battle with the neighbors, not wishing the estate to become a museum, one of Mr. Sipe's great-grandsons, the late William Peterson, who was the steward of the property, donated the home, its contents, and the land, and more than 500 feet of lakefront to the state of Wisconsin. Mr. Peterson passed away in March of 2013 at the age of 85. The property has now been designated as a state historic site and is now open to the public for tours for the past 13 years.
Oh, yes, you can go up there.
Transportation to the site is only by boat, which is the same way the original owners arrived over 100 years ago. If you've not taken the opportunity to visit Black Point and you want to be able to experience a true 1800 summer lake cottage, be sure to make time to visit this truly amazing site. You will feel as if you step back in time to the days when homes like this lined the shores around the lake. You may have noticed that most of the property is obscured from view. You see, the Syke family has a rather unusual hobby. They collected evergreen trees. Throughout the years, they planted every type of evergreen tree that can grow in the soil and climate. At least 74 different species of evergreen tree are here. The colorful group of homes is known as the Highlands, followed by the Edgewater Terrace. Further down the shoreline, we will pass the Wooddale subdivision and another subdivision known as the Birches. The subdivisions along this stretch of the shoreline between Black Point and the Narrows did not begin until well into the 1930s or later. As the major estates were developing along the north shore, before the turn of the 20th century, the side of the lake was not considered prime land because it was quite steep and difficult to reach, since the roads for autos around the lake was not completed until 1910. There will now be a bit of a break in the tour. I will pick it up again in about 10 minutes, but you can use this time to go visit Julie in the bar or go to the restroom, stretch, whatever you may need to do. And I will see you guys in about 5 minutes.
Interesting how this is going to look because it's super wide.
If you look toward the left side of the boat, you will see the abutment I mentioned on earlier in the tour.
Man, that horn was loud.
We are now passing through the Narrows, the narrowest part of the lake, being less than a half a mile from shore to shore. The low-lying property in the Narrows is protected from the expanding winter ice by gates in the outlet located in the city of Lake Geneva. The lake does freeze over during the winter, sometimes 2 or 3 feet covers the lake. Late in the fall, they open the gates and lower the lake several inches to protect the shoreline from ice damage. In the spring, the gates are closed, and the melting snow and the spring rain fills up the lake within a few weeks. Also, all of the docks must be removed from the lake during the winter to prevent them from being destroyed by the powerful ice. As you may have noticed, like Pier 695, all the piers are numbered, and this is for 2 reasons. First and foremost, for safety, if you are on the lake and need assistance from the lake, a police or water safety patrol, you can call them and tell them your location by pier number you are near, which is more convenient than just telling them, oh look, I'm by a long white pier in a beautiful house. Second, for mail delivery, the U.S. mailboat Walworth, which is the boat we were on today, has been used to deliver mail to shoreline homes for over 100 years. Daily from June 15th through September 15th, departing at 10 a.m., the Walworth takes a trip around the lake delivering mail and newspapers with a rather unusual delivery technique. Our speedy mail person must jump off the boat, deposit the mail into the mailbox on the pier, and make the jump back onto the boat without ending up in the lake. And the boat never stops.
That's got to be a long tour. You got to go up to every one.
Every once in a while, the person falls in the water.
Oh, really? But you're going to every shoreline then.
The homes surrounding a large expanse of lawn are known as the 700 Club because all of the homes share the address of Pier 700 or 700 Lakeshore Drive. The original home was a huge 3-story mansion built in 1905 for John Baptiste Grum's family, who once owned one of the largest distilleries in Chicago. The large stone building on the bluff is the clubhouse of Lake Geneva Country Club. We're looking at the back of the building. The front of this beautiful building faces one of the oldest 18-hole golf courses in the United States, sitting on 80 carefully manicured acres. This is not the original clubhouse. The original was a wooden structure with gabled roofing, which burned in a 1915 fire. This is one of the reasons that the structure used so much stone and concrete. The building was built with the front facing the golf course rather than the lake so that there would be no mistake as to the club's purpose, golf. The club is only open through May through October and is still a private country club with a small membership limit to about 220 members. and their families. Some of the families have been with the club for several generations ever since its founding. Now, getting into the club is very difficult. You have to be invited by a member, and then you have to give a speech onto why you should be a member there, and even if one of the 220 people say you can't be a member, you are not allowed in the club. And tonight they will also be giving off a firework display here, which you should see from downtown Lake Geneva. This great home has the distinction of resting on the only island on Geneva Lake. Duck Island, as it is known, is the summer home of Mr. Henry Bates and his family. The island is connected to the mainland by a small footpath behind the home and is about a mile from the main road. Since the golf course separates the home from the highway, it is quite unlikely that the Bates will ever have a driveway. By arrangement with the country club, the Bates park their car in the club's parking lot and commute across the 8th fairway to their homes by means of a golf cart. You may notice a small shack behind the footpath that is their 2-cart garage. This entire corner of the lake was once a large marsh called the Lower Duck Hole by the early residents because of the many waterfowl that used to nest here. Some of the marsh is even evident behind Duck Island. In the 1960s, a local realtor had 63 acres of natural wetland drained and dredged. He then developed this area into the Trinky Estates subdivision. The grassy area coming into view was not intended as the front yard of those homes, but it was planned as an aircraft landing strip. However, the length was not properly calculated, and after many mishaps, like a chimney coming off the roof from the airplane landing there, they considered it unsafe for use.
That's it. I didn't see many kayakers.
Boat docked at this pier, and that is the Lynn Fire Boat. It is basically a floating fire hydrant capable of pumping lake water for any distance from the lake as needed. It also has a water canyon that shoots water 300 feet in any direction.
Some kayakers out there.
And was launched just a few years ago. And as you may notice, this house on the shoreline is one of the most unique houses in the lake, as it has its own clock tower, and we at the cruise line have nicknamed it Timeless. The white home with the trees in front is called the Allegheny. It was built in 1925 for Lewis Edward Myers, founder of the L.E. Myers Electrical Contracting Company in 1891. They are still a premier contractor of a large electrical utility construction projects across the nation. The next 20 or so homes we are passing are built on a small part of the estate of James Hobart Moore. The estate was called Lorimar, named for his wife Laura. Mr. Moore and his brother William were business partners and venture capitalists. You may recognize some of the companies they organized: the Diamond Match Company, the American Tin Plate Company, the American Can Company, the Rock Island Railroad, and the National Biscuit Company, better known today as Nabisco. Mr. Moore built the estate in 1900 for approximately $3.5 million at a time when the average wage was just a few dollars per week. At the time, the estate included 400 acres and more than 30 buildings, including a huge Elizabethan-style mansion. The main house was V-shaped, allowing every room, 27 in total, to have a view of the lake, even those on the third floor. Now, these next two homes we don't have much information about, as they were built in the past couple years. This stately white home with a green sloping roof has been known as the Fairlawn since it was built in 1894 for the late Charles Wacker. Mr. Wacker was president of the Chicago Planning Commission after the Chicago fire. Under his guidance, the well-organized redevelopment of the city took place. His Chicago planning included the Outer Drive, Union Station, Soldier Field, the Shedd Aquarium, and of course the ingenious double-layered road that was named in his honor, Wacker Drive. The elegant Spanish-style home is known as Casa de Sueño, or Dream House. The original estate, built in 1893, was known as Galwood. It burned down in 1928 and rebuilt in 1930. For several years, the home was owned by Mr. and Mrs. William Bell, formerly of Chicago. Miss Bell is probably better known to Chicagoans as TV personality Miss Lee Phillip. The late Mr. and Mrs. Bell co-created produced daytime TV dramas or soap operas. Two of their best known include the Emmy Award-winning series The Young and the Restless and The Bold and the Beautiful. The large stone building over on the bluff is the Geneva Inn. The Geneva Inn is a luxurious European-style bed and breakfast. The inn features an excellent restaurant called the Grand View, which has terrace seating so all guests get a grand view of the lake. We are now crossing through Buttons Bay. Buttons Bay is named for Alexander H. Button, a local horticulturist who had a home here for many years. Today this is the site of Bigfoot Beach State Park, which is about a fourth of a mile of sand beach and 266 acres of public picnic, camping, and park area that are all owned and operated by the state of Wisconsin. Much of the land that is now Bigfoot Beach State Park and all of the land that extends out to the point we are approaching was once part of the most unique estate ever built on the lake. Mr. and Mrs. Frank Chandler constructed Ceylon Court high on this bluff overlooking the lake back in 1893. The original building, which became the main home, was brought to the United States by the government of Ceylon, now the island nation known as Sri Lanka, off the tip of India, as their contribution to the 1893 Columbian Exposition in Chicago. After the exposition closed, F.R. Chandler purchased the building, had it carefully dismantled, loaded onto 26 railroad boxcars, shipped to the lake, and reassembled out to the point we are approaching, where it stood until 1958. Three very modern homes you see on the bluff ahead of us picture the most unique home ever built on the lake, Ceylon Court, which is a replica of a Buddhist temple. The building was 4 stories tall and constructed of 19 different woods, all native to Ceylon. The exterior walls were varnished mahogany. The octagonal pagoda-shaped roof was covered in bright orange tile, making it a prominent landmark for many years. Authentic to the last detail, beds hung from chains in the ceiling to prevent snakes from crawling up the coast, which was apparently a problem in Ceylon, but thankfully not here in Lake Geneva. After undertaking this extensive project, the Chandlers only lived here for 6 years when they sold the estate to Mr. and Mrs. John Mitchell. The Mitchells spent their summers here for nearly 30 years until they were killed in a tragic car accident in 1928. The estate was then purchased by Frederick Louis Maytag of the well-known Maytag Washing Machine Company. The Maytags lived here for 2 decades, and the point of the land is still referred to as the Maytag Point. The Maytags sold the estate to a developer in 1948, and the property was subdivided over the next 10 years. In 1958, a developer auctioned off the furnishings and wood trim and let the Lake Geneva Fire Department use the home in a controlled burn to practice their firefighting skills. The beautiful white home we are now passing is built on the corner of an old Maytag property. The home was owned for several years by the late Mr. and Mrs. Joint Canellis. Mr. Canellis was the founder of the former owner of the Andes Candies, internationally known manufacturers after dinner mints and chocolates. Their daughter, Elaine Canellis, was the first female jumper and has written a book about the mailboat. Behind the gazebo and small point that projects out from the shore is a townhouse development called Somerset. It was built in the late 1970s on the site of Henry G. Selfridge Estate, Horace Hall, which dates back into 1899. Later, Mr. Selfridge moved to London, England, where he started the Selfridges department store, as well known in London as Marshall Field's was in Chicago. The condominium development on the hill was built on the former estate of George Walker and was known as Point Comfort. This area is now called Vista del Lago, which translates to view of the lake, quite appropriate for if you look over your left shoulder, you can see nearly 7 miles away down to the village of Fontana. Okay, I'm going to start a bit early as we are approaching the largest home ever built on Geneva Lake. I'm just going to clear up a few rumors at first. This was never the Playboy Club, though there was a club on Highway 50 where the Grand Geneva is. Nobody famous such as Oprah or Michael Jordan lived here, and it is not Al Capone's hideout. It is known as the Stone Manor and contains more than 50 rooms and 50,000 square feet. Otto Young, who began building in 1899, originally called the mansion Younglands, and as you can see, the home is an Italian-style palace. Otto Young fathers died in Germany, and he followed his mother to live in the United States in the mid-1859. Although his family was quite wealthy when they lived in Germany, they were virtually penniless when they arrived in America. Otto started out by selling costume jewelry from a pushcart on the sidewalks of New York, but during his lifetime he amassed a very sizable fortune for himself and his family. After the Chicago fire of 1871, he moved to Chicago, where he eventually made a fortune in real estate and invested every nickel he could scrape together in Chicago real estate under the burned-out city. Many people thought that the Chicago would never rebuild after the devastation of fire, but Otto Young wisely thought otherwise. Much of what he bought is known today as the Loop. At the time of his death in 1906, a conservative estimate of his fortune was set over $25 million. Plans for the home had originally been more modest, and a $150,000 budget was set, but with many elaborate additions, the price skyrocketed to closer to $2 million, which is extremely expensive today, but astronomical over 100 years ago. There are 7 levels in all, 2 sub-basements, 4 main levels, and a rooftop terrace. Set off by a 250-foot wide veranda, the mansion stretches 174 feet as it faces the lake and is 70 foot deep. The exterior walls are dressed with Bedford limestone, the floors are hand-laid parquet tile, and the interior walls are Tennessee marble. When completed in 1901, all of the doorknobs, plumbing, and electrical fixtures on the main level were 14-karat gold-plated, with matching solid sterling silver on the second. Ceilings in the mansion are hand-carved out of mortar and lavishly decorated by imported European artists with breathtaking oil paintings.
I saw someone
On
walk
the main
by.
floor was a beautiful ballroom, complete with crystal chandelier, huge mirrors, and ornate pink marble fire. The hand-carved dining room could seat over 100 guests. Also, on the main floor were a parlor, library, music room, game room, butler's pantry, and a vast kitchen. The second and third levels were basically bedrooms and bedroom suites. The fourth floor was designed for recreation and even contained a gymnasium and a miniature golf course. Originally, the roof was a garden with willow trees, but as we know, as trees grow up, roots go down, and that created much damage to the roof. So instead, they added a 14-foot rooftop pool, and as you can see, there is the guardrails up there. Mr. Young only enjoyed the home for 5 years before his death, but the mansion remained in the family until 1939 when Otto Young's granddaughter presented the home and about 8 acres of surrounding land to the Episcopal Church to be used as private school for girls. Unfortunately, the school failed financially after a few years, and financial problems have followed the home ever since. In the early 1960s, the mansion was taken over by Walworth County for back taxes. A tax auction was held and was bought by a developer for just $75,000. While you might think you missed out on a deal of a lifetime, there have been many millions of dollars spent in the restoration of the building. The 1970s, the main level was transformed into an elegant French restaurant known as the Stone Manor Inn, which is where it gets its name today. Next came the failed Christmas tree museum. We're still scratching our heads on why that didn't turn out to be successful in the summer resort town of Lake Geneva. In the 1980s, it was purchased by a Chicago couple and converted into 7 luxury condominiums. Now, that is where we thought the story of the Stone Manor would end, but in 2018 came the announcement that Tina Trahan, wife of the CEO of Stars Cable Company, purchased 6 of the 7 condominiums and had invested $13.5 million into its repairing and update. The family plans to spend 6 weeks here just in the summer, and that is the story of the largest single-family home built on the lake, originally called Younglands and today known as Stone Manor. And that concludes my part of the tour, so I will be handing the microphone over to the captain, and he will take you back into downtown Lake Geneva.
Nice job, Alexis. She's new with us this year at the cruise line, just started narrating tours couple days ago, and she tackled that full lake tour all by herself. Usually some of the new guys won't take that much on, but boy, she did a great job. So 17 years old, not afraid to speak in front of a boatload of people. Boy, when I was her age, I was scared to speak in front of anybody. But great job, Alexis. We'll get her life jacket on now and then prepare to get the boat tied up. As we do that, work our way back to the docks. A couple more landmarks to point out to you folks. That 10-story building off to our right about the 1 o'clock position, that's the Geneva Towers. Now that building caused a lot of controversy when it was built for two reasons. First, it's built on the former site of the Geneva Hotel. The Geneva Hotel was the only Frank Lloyd Wright Commission property within the city limits, and no one came to save it when they needed it most. Instead, they tore it down, replaced it with that building. A lot of people didn't like the looks of it once it was completed, but by then there was nothing they could do about it, except for pass an ordinance saying that no other building could be built taller than the tallest treetops. You'll see these hotels off to the right following along those guidelines. The brick building where our docks are located, that's the Riviera Ballroom, built in the 1930s to help stimulate the local economy after the Great Depression. Louis Armstrong, Jimmy Dorsey, even a young Frank Sinatra has played there. Feel free to walk through the lower level, check out the shops, and they've got a board in there showing all the big bands that would stop there throughout the years. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed your full lake tour today around beautiful Geneva Lake. Not too bad out there today, a little choppy in some areas with all the boats out there, but for the most part, pretty decent trip around the lake. I actually thought today would be a little busier on the lake, so depending on what your expectations are on the lake, I thought it was kind of quiet out there, but look at all the people on the beach though, that's not quiet, holy smokes. So I read an article in the paper the other day that over Memorial Day weekend, the beach generated $31,000 in revenue over 3 days. We'll have to see how much they generate this weekend. Good crowd there. Just ask that everyone please remain seated until we get the boat tied up. Once the plank's in place, you guys are free to exit the boat. Those of you on the upper deck, stay seated for a few extra minutes. We're going to unload the lower deck first. We'll get the upper deck loaded, and then I'll get the wheelchair ramp on for anyone else that needs assistance getting off the boat here. On behalf of Alexis, Julie behind the bar, and myself, thank you so much for coming out today on this beautiful 4th of July weekend. We'll be on the dock once the boat's tied up. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. We'll do our best to answer those for you.
I think that was a different boat.
Got a little time on the dock this time. We're going to switch the boat around, to rechange the seating configuration, and head out for pick up a family at Lynn Pier and take them for a little fireworks cruise tonight. So don't forget the fireworks tonight at the Country Club. You'll get a good view of those from downtown Lake Geneva. Like I said, Alexis will be on the dock too if you have any questions for her. If you want to thank her for her great job narrating the tour today, you're more than welcome to do so. We do our best to work together as a team and keep you guys safe, entertain, and educate you about the lake. So we hope we checked all those boxes off for you. Any token of appreciation by you folks is greatly appreciated by us. So thanks for coming out today, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day here in beautiful downtown Lake Geneva. We'll have you to the dock shortly. Have a great day, everyone.
I know that.
So I said I thought we were gonna bump. Beach is still packed. So hopefully you like the video of, it's actually Geneva Lake in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So if you like the video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, just so I know what kind of videos you guys like to see. Grabbing my garbage here. So just leaving now, just leaving the boat. Thanks for watching the video, and hopefully I'll do more videos like this in the future. So to come out, it's on the lower deck. Sorry.
You're all right.
Good job.
Thank you for coming.
Sure. So I'm the last of them. So that was the end of the tour of Geneva Lake. That's a full tour. That's the longest one. There's the boat.